Welcome everyone. I am so incredibly excited to have you here for this brand new explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating dive into the hidden world of human reproduction. We're going to unpack the brilliant, yet, incredibly delicate ways our bodies actually regulate fertility. We'll also look at exactly how medical professionals uncover what goes wrong when patients face conditions like infertility, PCOS, or hypogonadism. We'll be drawing from a fantastic foundational source on the biochemical investigation of these gonadal disorders by Dr. Ibrahim Z.U. And trust me, by the end of this, you're going to look at human biology in a completely new light. Let's get into it.
So right off the bat, I want you to think about a pretty fundamental question. How does your body actually control fertility? I mean, we often think of reproduction as just this thing that happens in the background, right? But the reality is that your body relies on this incredibly sophisticated, totally hidden communication network. It's a constant super dynamic flow of chemical messengers telling different organs exactly what to do and exactly when to do it.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. First, the reproductive control system. Second, the three-tier HPG axis. Third, pulses and negative feedback. Fourth, pinpointing the problem lesion. And finally, the hormone testing toolkit. Section 1. The reproductive control system. You can really think of this entire thing as a medical detective story. It's all about how doctors read biochemical error codes to figure out exactly where a patient's internal communication has just broken down. Moving right along to Section 2, the three-tier HPG axis. This is where we build out our understanding of the body's actual chain of command. Now, before our medical detectives can spot what's broken, they obviously need to know exactly how the healthy command chain works. Enter the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, or, just the HPG axis for short. This brilliantly illustrates the ultimate top-down flow of signals. Up at the very top, in the brain, you've got the hypothalamus. That talks to the anterior pituitary, right below it, which then talks to the gonads, the ovaries or testes, all the way down at the bottom. Think of the solid pathways as the top-down commands, while the dashed line swooping back up represent the system's really clever way of checking in on itself. Let's break down those three specific tiers step by step. Step 1 is the hypothalamus, which is the absolute master controller in the brain. It kicks the whole shebang off by sending out a hormone called GnRH. Then, step 2. That GnRH travels a super short distance to the anterior pituitary gland. It essentially knocks on its door and says, hey, release 2 more hormones, LH and FSH. Finally, step 3. LH and FSH travel all the way down to the gonads. Once they arrive, they instruct the gonads to do their main jobs, which is producing sex steroids like testosterone, estradiol, and progesterone, and producing gametes, meaning eggs or sperm. It is just this beautiful, cascading relay race of chemical signals.
Section 3. Pulses and negative feedback. Let's see how this incredible biological machinery actually maintains its balance.
So how does this system keep from completely overloading? Well, first, we have to understand an absolutely vital concept called pulsatile secretion. The hormones in this axis, especially GnRH and LH, they aren't just steadily dripping into the bloodstream like a leaky faucet. Actually, they're released in distinct, rhythmic bursts or pulses. Why does this matter to our medical detectives? Well, if you take a single random blood test, you might catch a patient right in the middle of a massive hormonal burst or right in a deep valley between pulses. So that single snapshot can completely mislead a diagnosis. Timing in this chemical network is, quite literally, everything.
The second crucial mechanism is negative feedback. Think of this just like the thermostat in your house. When the heat gets way too high, the thermostat tells the furnace to shut off. In the body, once the gonads produce enough sex steroids, those steroids travel all the way back up the chain to the pituitary and hypothalamus and basically say, okay, we have enough. You can stop sending GnRH, LH, and FSH now. They restrain the system to keep it perfectly in check. On top of that, the gonads produce peptides like one called inhibin. Inhibin has a very specific job. It selectively travels up to hit the brakes solely on FSH production.
Section 4. Pinpointing the problem lesion. It's time to figure out how to find that broken wire.
Now this is where the detective work gets real. If a patient is suffering from infertility or hypogonadism, chemical pathologists have to figure out exactly where the cut wire is in this elaborate three-tier network. The gonadotrophin axis is incredibly fragile. Because of that, the golden rule of endocrinology is this: you absolutely must interpret these hormones together, never in isolation. Because they're part of this continuous, dynamic feedback loop, looking at just one hormone without its partner is kind of like listening to only one half of a phone conversation. You're just never going to get the full story. And that brings us to the most powerful diagnostic concept in this entire explainer. The exact location of the biological lesion entirely dictates the pattern of lab results the doctor's going to see. Let's compare the two main scenarios. Imagine primary gonadal failure. This means the gonads down at the bottom are broken. They can't make sex steroids. Because those steroids are low, that negative feedback thermostat we just talked about, it's totally broken. The brain thinks, oh no, we need more steroids, so it pumps out massive amounts of FSH and LH, desperately trying to force the gonads to work. The result? Sky-high FSH and LH, which is known as a hypergonadotrophic state. On the flip side, look at secondary pituitary or hypothalamic failure. Here, the brain itself is the problem. It's completely failing to send the initial signals. The gonads are actually perfectly fine, but they aren't getting any instructions, leaving FSH and LH levels abnormally low. This is a hypogonadotrophic state. Same exact symptom for the patient, but completely opposite chemical readouts.
Section 5, the Hormone Testing Toolkit. Let's look at the actual biochemical assays used to solve these cases.
To actually read all these biological clues, pathologists rely on a very specific diagnostic toolkit, and knowing which tool does what is absolutely crucial. FSH and LH are our gonadotrophins. They're the ultimate compasses used to locate the lesion, telling us if it's a primary or a secondary issue. Then there's testosterone, the main androgen to check. Specifically, doctors look at the free fraction, because that's the part that's actually biologically active. Estradiol is the principal ovarian estrogen. Next up is progesterone. Measuring this around day 21 of a typical menstrual cycle is a brilliant, super reliable marker to prove whether ovulation has actually occurred. And finally, we have prolactin. This one is kind of the rogue variable. If prolactin levels are raised, say, maybe due to a benign tumor, it acts like a massive override switch. It can completely suppress the entire HPG axis, shutting down fertility entirely.
So to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a clinical puzzle to really test your new knowledge of this top-down network. Imagine a patient comes in. Their blood work shows extremely low sex steroids, but their LH and FSH levels are sky-high. So what does this all mean? Where exactly is the broken wire in their system? Well, think back to our feedback loops. If the brain is literally screaming with high LH and FSH, but the bottom tier just isn't responding, yep, you guessed it. For sure that is a primary gonadal failure. It is just absolutely amazing how a few chemical clues can reveal the hidden inner workings of our bodies. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I really hope this leaves you eager to solve the next medical mystery.